Travis.
Hey.
Would you like to meditate, darling?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Taking a deep breath in and letting everything out. Settling into the present moment. Soaking in the silence, relaxing deeper and deeper. Letting any thoughts just float by like clouds in the sky. Relaxing deeper as we're here now, knowing that everything we need is right here in the present moment. Not worrying about anything that was just happening or what will be happening soon. Just trusting and surrendering that when the next moment comes, we'll have everything we need there. Coming together in the sacred place to exchange energy and ideas, soul to soul. And so it is. You needed that.
Yeah.
I could feel it.
I definitely did.
Do you feel centered now?
I feel centered. I feel very cognizant of just what my system's doing right now. And in the observer seat,
Anything you want to share?
I was noticing, nerves, right? A lot of uncertainty. I don't know if fear is the right word, but adrenaline. I know heart pounding, kind of a heaviness or density around the heart space, like low throat. It's nervousness and excitement, and those are two sides of the same coin. Anxiety and excitement is, they can. It's like the same type of energy, and
It is.
But I'm feeling grounded as that's moving around internally.
And it's good that you're so aware of that. That's the first step to putting anything to rest.
Not even necessarily putting it to rest, but allowing space for like whatever needs to come up and through, and recognizing that it's valid. A lot of the work that I do personally and with clients is building that relationship with all these different parts, and without needing to get rid of or change or fix, but to understand and allow that part to be seen. And that's usually what allows it to soften.
It's so funny. This is exactly where I was feeling pulled to start our conversation on, because everything starts with the individual. And I think the main point of confusion in any attachment style, in any dynamic with any person, is that management of all the things going on inside of me, and then seeing and sensing that there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on with that other person simultaneously. That's out of your control. And that can be very scary. And I've lived a lot of my life quite terrified of that back and forth. And honestly getting overwhelmed with all the variables within myself, and then, you know, getting with another person and feeling their energies, and then starting to get confused on, am I feeling what they're feeling, or is that mine? And then I get by myself and I'm like, oh, wait, maybe that was theirs, not mine. And then I feel differently now. And so I'd love to start with emotions. And first of all, what are they? What are these feelings and sensations? Secondly, how do we increase our awareness of them and learn how to act upon them in a more conscious way? Because that does seem to be the root of all issues.
What are emotions? That's a great starting point. That's a great question.
It's big.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is like their signal. Their alerts, protection mechanisms, their means of connection, like gateways for connection. And connection being like just this base human need. They're doors to connection and barriers for protection simultaneously. Anytime you feel an emotion, that's a signal. And so what precipitates emotion is a change in your physiological state. Anytime you feel anxiety, anger, joy, sadness, before that feels fully expressed, there's a shift in your physiology. Your heart rate might start to increase. You might feel blood pumping. You might notice your body temperature changing. These really subtle shifts. Your breath rate increases, you're more shallow, or maybe it slows down depending on the emotion. But there's these subtle physiological shifts that precipitate an emotion. You know, that's your nervous system changing or shifting, upregulating or downregulating, telling your system you're safe, or, oh shit, get out of here.
I mean, my relationship with emotions is just personally, because there is an aspect of handling emotions and processing them with another person. But even on an individual level, processing emotions for me can be very complicated. And sometimes it is a matter of talking it out with someone, but more of the time I've noticed my defense mechanism, if you will, or my way of processing is to go away and figure it out before I bring it up to someone. And lately I've been learning how to be more vulnerable, and as I'm feeling the emotions, not necessarily acting upon them, but going to that observer place in my mind, looking down and being like, hey, so there's this thing going on in me right now, and I needed to tell you about it. And like, I can almost laugh about not expressing the emotion, like, oh, I'm so angry, like, I'm feeling rage in my belly right now, and I feel like I need to let you know about it. It's like that emotion's not coming out expressively, but I'm like, hey, I feel this thing. Can we talk about it? And being more vulnerable and bringing it up as it's happening, very scary. But I've been learning to push myself to do that, because what happens most of the time, I'm surrounding myself with people who are a little more evolved and can be like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, that's a total normal reaction in this situation. Let's unpack that. It's not rejected or shunned, which is what I think we kind of learned as kids. A lot of us we're not around emotionally available parents that could handle those things.
Yeah. You don't have to have all your shit figured out. I think that's a misconception that a lot of people fall into, this: I need to be healed before I get in a relationship. I need to have this solved before I bring it up, because I don't want to open this can of worms that maybe I don't know how to close. And then a lot of anxiety for a lot of people around conflict, and not wanting to upset the other person, or wanting to avoid conflict altogether. But yeah, when you're with someone that you feel safe with, you can co-regulate with, you can bring that stuff up live. And it helps to have, I think, these conversations, beforehand, as you realize maybe that's the strategy you want to employ. Like, oh, okay, I don't have it all figured out. And you can literally say it, this feels really scary to me. It feels really scary to bring this up. But I'm practicing being more transparent, more vulnerable. Basically, set the container, set the boundaries of the container, set the agreements. If you have a really secure partner, you may not even need to do that. It may just be intuitive for them. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, or if you're trying to heal dysfunctional patterns, I think that can be, there's a lot more to it, but that's a necessary piece, setting the boundaries of the container, and then bringing up those emotions. And it's not pinpointing or blaming, or even trying to fix per se. It's just a practice of, kind of like when we started, right? I am noticing nervousness, and my heart rate increases, and just describing that sensation, I think can bring the guards down, bring the walls down a little bit, and create an opportunity for connection instead of defensiveness. And even if it's anger, hey, I noticed, this, like you said, rage in my belly. That's a scary thing to communicate to somebody, because they might want to know, oh no, did I do something wrong? Mm-hmm. And if you're committed to just working through things together and holding space for each other's truths, then that's okay. It's okay to feel angry, and ask for what you need as you process that. Maybe it's saying, I need some space right now. Or maybe just a back rub would be nice right now. So just kind of focus on my breath and the sensation, but requesting what it is that you need, and reassuring the other person that you are willing to stumble through it, even if it's messy. It's okay if it's messy.
Or you're not articulating it as good as you think you could have. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares? It's really easy to ruminate or reflect back and think, oh, I should have said it differently. Oh, I missed points. And you can clarify that later if you want.
Yeah, I've given myself a lot more forgiveness lately, where it's I tell my friends and the people in my life, I'm like, hey, if I say something batshit, 5 minutes later, I'm going to give myself permission to be I changed my mind about that thing that I said. Giving myself that grace and kind of laughing at myself with it and being well, that was fucking stupid. And not in a condescending way towards myself, but just allowing myself to change my mind. And that's okay. When I first present something, it doesn't have to be all perfect and pretty. Because that's what I find the hardest part about communicating emotions is translating them into, wait, what need is this actually coming from? And I would love to understand how you see the connection in that translation working, because, like you said, emotions are messy. And maybe it is a navigational thing with the person, but still it does come down to that emotional gateway really is trying to tell you something. And how do you connect to what the root need is that emotion is signaling?
Yeah, so that comes back to really developing that relationship with your different parts, so that it's never your significant other's responsibility to know what your needs are. So first, it's like you got to spend time figuring out what that is. It's compassionate inquiry towards these different aspects. So I'm like big on parts work, shadow work, internal family systems, all similar labels for the same kind of work. Getting curious about these parts. And I'm always surprised at what intuitively comes through when I like ask questions to these different parts of myself. And yeah, there's so many different needs, right? They're broken into kind of 6 primary buckets. You've got like need for certainty, security, need for uncertainty, surprise, spontaneity, excitement, newness, need for significance, love and connection, need for growth, a need for contribution, doing something meaningful.
Is that Tony Robbins?
That is, yeah.
Yeah, it rings a bell.
And then I'm a big fan of nonviolent communication. So that's kind of the primary framework that has shaped my life and my communication skills or strategies with others. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. One of the most impactful books I've ever read in my life.
What's it called?
And that was Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. It's a framework of communication centered in communicating essentially what will make the world more wonderful for you and how others can support that. And it's never demanding anybody do something for you. If you just look up nonviolent communication needs inventory, you'll get a PDF of all these different needs.
I'll link it down below.
Yeah, it's great. It can really help kind of segment out what are these different things. So I'll just list them off. There's connection, physical well-being, honesty, play, peace, autonomy, and meaning. Those are kind of the umbrella category, like umbrella needs, like universal needs. It's a much more robust list too, but like that's a really great place to start to parse out what are my needs.
And do you kind of rate them on like a 1 to 10 scale, like importance, like how much it resonates as like, oh yes, that's what I need. That's what I'm missing in my relationships right now.
Yeah, you can do that. So all those needs that I listed can also be values, right? Like I value connection, I value honesty, play, peace, and getting super duper clear what your values are, what you think they are, or what you think are most important to you, maybe your ideal version of self. And then what are you actually valuing?
Right now, currently.
Yeah, like if you look at your day-to-day, your hour by hour throughout the week, what are you actually valuing? And it's okay. Like, approach that without judgment. Just kind of self-acceptance. It's compassionate curiosity. Oh, what's the discrepancy here? And how are you going to show up to support each of those values? And like, what are you specifically going to do on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis? If you value connection, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
What are you doing for that? But to link this back to emotions and needs, how do you know if you need a back rub or if you need space? It's a coupling of kind of learning what needs are, using that list or the Tony Robbins list, and then spending there's a lot of solitude, a lot of silent, still moments with yourself, which I think is really uncomfortable for a lot of people. There's a reason that we avoid that time with ourselves.
Yeah, because there can be some painful things.
Yeah.
Just sitting there waiting to be felt.
Yeah.
And it's very loud, the lives we live. They're very loud. Everything's very overstimulating and distracting. So that builds up over time. And then before you know it, like you don't even want to go touch that because it's so sore. because you haven't, it's just been building up in the background. That's painful and scary.
Like you said, building up in the background. Emotions are, especially emotions that, maybe you're like your shadow self, aspects of yourself, emotions that you may suppress or not want to feel or validate or give attention to that often or ever. I like to think it's kind of like, I think it's like crabgrass.
Crabgrass?
Crabgrass. I don't know. Maybe it's where I'm from. It's like you can put all the cover on it in the world. Like you can put weed block, cover it with dirt, and if you haven't like really excavated it out, it somehow finds its way to the surface every single time. And it's just rooted even stronger every single time it makes it back up. And you have to really excavate it out all the way down to its core to finally get rid of it. I think that's what suppressed or unfelt emotions are like. They will find a way to the surface, and each time they're gonna come back stronger.
Yeah. I think for me, the dark places that I've had to go within myself that needed healing and uprooting, one of the main psychological blocks that kept me from even moving into the techniques and the methods of uprooting them is that I didn't want to be ugly. I didn't want to face the truth of how broken those parts of myself really felt, how wrong, how bad those parts of me really felt. And when I started to come to peace with that, everything just is what it is. Even these ugly parts of myself just are. I'm the one that's putting the ugly, bad, wrong label on it. The parts, they're just chilling. They're doing the things, you know? And when I started to acquire a more objective view of them, I could let myself be ugly and fully live them. And that was like the first thing that I personally, just in my self-taught journey of healing, did. Was my initial instinct was to just, once I got past that mental block, just dive in. Like completely embody and waterfall that shit out and ugly cry and scream and convulse, whatever my body needed to do to fully embody whatever that was that I never wanted to touch before. Once it releases, it doesn't have that hold on you anymore. It doesn't have that weight anymore. And what I've noticed too is they're a lot less heavy than you think they are. That makes sense. Like, this is a childhood thing that, because of XYZ that happened, it makes sense. I love myself through that, and it's okay that I felt that way, but I don't need to hold on to it anymore or restrict it from flowing through me. But that's just kind of how I've like self-taught myself to like get rid of that heavy shit.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Who or what was your most significant teacher to discover that process?
Whoa. I didn't have very good examples in my life, so I'm not sure it was outside of me. Ever since I was young, I've always felt like a knowing inside of me, an internal guidance system or compass. And like I said, when I removed the mental block of, oh, this is bad, it was my instinct to just dive. You know how a glove gets inside out and all crumpled up? I knew that I needed to fill the whole thing with water in order for it to be seen and understood. And now I understand that understanding is like the main healer. Like that is such a pivotal point in healing, is fully understanding something, every nook and cranny of whatever that was. Maybe YouTube, I do listen to a lot of philosophical teachers. Anthony DeMello is one of my favorite speakers, Ram Dass, Alan Watts. I mean, Teal Swan even. These YouTube gurus, if you will, have been an interesting point of wisdom for me that I've always been kind of drawn to. So I think that's really been my exposure, is just YouTube Academy.
Best university out there.
Yeah.
YouTube was where you ended up. I learned a lot from there. Learned a lot there. Great philosophers that we have just unprecedented access to. Ram Dass has a lecture called Path of the Heart that I think is just phenomenal for those interested in relationship and love and non-attachment. But what do you think it was? Maybe a particular relationship, romantic, or maybe parents, or
I see what you mean by teacher.
Well, initially I meant like, did you have a coach or a therapist, or was there a book that just like, but if nothing's like exactly coming to mind, then maybe what was the catalyst for you to realize, what was the catalyst for your awakening?
I mean, it was the rock bottom. It was how unhappy I was. And I accidentally got conditioned to desire all of these things that I had no control over being a part of my experience or not. And I allowed so much of my power to be externalized into other people and situations, and that, only if the situation becomes the desired outcome that I want can I be happy. And when you externalize your power like that, you get stuck. And it was that paralysis and just feeling such like I was sprinting in circles with myself and within my life. That was just very, very depressing, like I didn't want to stay stuck. Like, I'm a very motivated, fiery, want to take action kind of person. And when I'm witnessing myself sprinting into a fucking wall daily, I got to do something about that, because I want to be free. Like, one of my needs, as you were going through that list, fucking freedom. Like, I cannot feel imprisoned. And that, bringing it to relationships, has been definitely a trigger for me. Because a lot of relationships begin to feel like a prison.
Yeah, that's a pretty common experience, I think. And uprooting emotions and uprooting maybe patterns or behaviors. Like you said, as long as they are, as long as they're suppressed or unaddressed, they have a lot of power. But once you finally release and move through it and integrate it, it loses its hold on you. It's always going to be a part, but in doing so, you can liberate it into new roles. So if there's a part that's like, oh shit, freedom's really important, and it feels that freedom is threatened, and it does everything it can to protect that need, protect that value. And there's a really good reason for that.
That's a great point. Like, any negative mechanism, at one point, you thought it was the thing that was going to keep you alive. That was your survival. And as we grow up and get older, those defense mechanisms stick around, and we realize, hopefully at some point, wow, this means of protection that I'm trying to use to protect myself is no longer serving me, is actually causing problems.
Yeah.
But we don't always realize that, because at one point it kept us safe, and our brain goes, well, this is the thing we do when that thing threatens us with this. And we get stuck there.
Yeah. The first question, I think, in unburdening and getting out of that stuckness is understanding how it actually is serving you. Even if objectively it's, it's you're self-sabotaging, or, engaging in some dysfunctional behavior that, your higher self is just suffering over. But how is it actually serving you?
Yeah.
For me, it was a 10-year cannabis addiction, and I was just perpetually stoned. And, no knocks to weed. I didn't have a healthy relationship with it. And my higher self like was just suffering and felt like this is not, or kind of saw it wasn't serving me. But it was serving me. It was keeping me safe and secure. So I'll give a little more of my backstory and kind of like what I went through to get here is, I was in a really long-term relationship that had all sorts of dysfunctional patterns, toxic cycles. And that cycle's addictive in and of itself. It has the same impact on brain chemistry as like a drug. If you get like really addicted to a drug, it lowers your dopamine baseline. And then what it takes it takes a lot more to just get back there. And then when you go above baseline, it feels really good. So if your baseline is lower and you're used to really operating below baseline, the swing back to baseline feels so fucking good. And then let alone if you make up and have some sort of bonding experience that feels like connecting, all the feel good neurotransmitters, the serotonin, oxytocin that you get from that swing feels so good to your system. Even if you hate the cycle, even if it's like you're sick of it and you can articulate that, intellectualize that this is not good, your system is kind of hooked on that roller coaster, that up and down, up and down. And that's kind of where I was at. Weed was serving me as a mechanism to feel like I was connecting, and it was a way to regulate my nervous system through the dysfunction and all the depression and anxiety that I was experiencing, actually getting the space that I so desperately craved, mentally disassociating and checking out. So I was getting this pseudo connection, but actually feeling like I was getting space.
What was the wake-up call for you?
The wake-up call for me was, if I had to pinpoint it to one moment, it turned out to be a unintentional long break from my ex-partner. She wasn't like taking space to like take space from the relationship. It was just like an extended trip. It gave me a lot of space. And during that time, my weed consumption dropped probably 90 or 95%. And that was wild.
It's very telling. Yeah. Sorry to laugh, but the truth hits me here.
Yeah. And I was really depressed and had high anxiety. I woke up every single day with just this pit in my stomach. And within a few days, that sensation of depression and anxiety was alleviating, was discernibly alleviating. That was my, oh shit, I can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
Because that was there and talking to me for a long time. And I was so disconnected from my own needs, my own emotions. And I was not showing up as a good partner. I was disassociated, stonewalling, not communicating. She was highly empathic and, intuitive and picking up that something was off. But I was in denial with what was going on with myself, that I was like unintentionally lying and then unintentionally gaslighting her empathic ability. And that created this just toxic merry-go-round cycle as well. I can't ignore this. And then, the weed consumption decreased substantially over the next month. And that began to increase my clarity. And I was spending a lot of time, like I did a meditation retreat, coincidentally during that time, and just kind of synchronistically grounded and reconnected to myself at a time that I was gaining clarity and really noticing what was going on physiologically. I chose differently. I reacted differently. And then in choosing differently, the response to that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Her reaction.
To
you changing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, like I make these reels, these skits that a lot is from my direct experience, that I've been through in the past and what I've learned about myself. And then I pull stuff from peers and things that I like hear about, like good stories. But the ones that feel really effortless to make, right? Or
Yeah.
like, I've been there.
Yeah. How long ago was this?
So that was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Separations are never easy.
Especially, it was long term, you said too.
Yeah, we were 7 years.
So you basically built a life together. You were living together, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Did you have plans for the future?
I couldn't commit to it. Every time I thought about it, my stomach dropped. And that was that was a physiological symptom, the psychosomatic response that I just shoved down and ignored every time. I would intellectualize that away. I'd rationalize that away. Like, no, 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 no. That's not the truth. That's not the truth. That, and that created even more disconnect between my body and my parts, what I needed, because of where I was at and what my parts were capable of at the time. I did not have capacity to even begin to heal that relationship. That wasn't an option for me. There's always questions, parts come up later that after separations, after people break up, that start doubting, did I make the right decision? Could things be different? Have I grown enough that things can be different? Have we both grown enough that things can be different? There's all these questions, and it's like, I didn't know what I didn't know, nor did she. So we didn't know what we didn't know. There just has to be ultimately some acceptance with that. So it's all part of the journey. All the pain is, hitting that rock bottom is usually what's necessary to transform and break out of the cocoon.
Yeah, you talk about these patterns. People can look everywhere and find what attachment styles are and the 4 that there are. But just to summarize, I'd love to hear your words on what the 4 are. And then I feel like we can kind of continue on, because that's the part of the foundation that I think attachment styles, just once you discover what yours is. For me, when I discovered what mine was, I'm disorganized or whatever it's called. It was so relieving to have that understanding that, there's a thing for the chaos and the cyclical pattern that I always go to. And there's help for it too. Coaches like you, so many resources online. So let's really just nutshell it, the 4 that there are.
We'll start with secure.
This is a good one. This is what we want.
This is what we're striving for. This is what we're all striving for. Secure is not perfect. Secure doesn't mean that you don't have reactions, that you are just a robot that's able to perfectly calm and able perfectly regulate all the time. That's not the case. But a secure relationship, a secure person, it's someone who's pretty grounded, who's highly communicative, someone who is able to identify and express what their emotions are as they're coming up and they're experiencing them, and request support in the way that they need, and then also receive that from their partner without going off the deep end or having some strong reaction. Or maybe they do have the strong reaction and they can stay in that space between reaction and response and choose their response a little more effectively.
Maybe taking a beat before speaking, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And someone who doesn't feel threatened by intimacy. When they get close, don't become really anxious and maybe hyper needy or clingy, and don't feel the need to, oh shit, I need space. I'm going to withdraw and kind of shut down. They're just, they're here for it.
There is no overcompensation. And for me, what really rings a bell in my mind is there's no life or death attachment or detachment. There's this even keeled kind of toggle between the two where we're just juggling back and forth between, I'm an individual and I'm also connected to you, but I'm not only connected to you and I'm not only an individual. There's this little juggle back and forth, and you're not really attached to either. You're not holding one ball for too long.
That's it. I love that analogy. That's a great way to put it.
I just made that up. Fuck yeah.
Killing it out here. I love it. Yeah, that's a perfect, concise little description of, they don't oscillate to the extremes. Really balanced between individuality and attachment. Because attachment's not bad. It's not wrong to be codependent with somebody. So when I say codependent, I mean just like depending on somebody. Codepending on one another.
Yeah.
That's what relationships are.
We have each other's back kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like in really secure relationships, there's that healthy balance between the dependent nature and the individuality and the independence. The dependent and the independence.
And then asking for when you need one or the other a little more, and having another secure partner that respects that and honors that. And in fact, I've noticed when it's easy, the other person goes, hey, I think you need that thing. You need that space right now. You go do you. I'm going to go over here. Like, I can tell you need to go over there for a minute. You have a person helping you regulate.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, it's never your partner's responsibility to just know what you need. But as you get to know each other, absolutely, yeah, they can guess. They can say, hey, I'm wondering or suspecting you might need this. And that can help the other person be like, oh yeah, you're right. I do need to get the hell away from you right now. Or I do really want to spend more time.
Especially when healing, if you were in the other three styles that we're about to talk about.
Yeah. So that's secure. Then you've got anxious, hyper attachment to somebody, really tying your own well-being to the other person, tying your emotional state to the other person, oftentimes experiencing a lot of anxiety around what's going on in the relationship, what they might be doing, how do they feel about me, do they love me, do they want to be with me, do they care? And
almost a paranoia.
Yeah. Depending on the level, it can be pretty obsessive. I haven't heard from them in a while. Is everything okay? Are they still interested?
Jealousy can come up too. I thought you were going to be home, but I saw that you were out. Maybe the person wasn't even with someone, but that other person's going to think, oh, maybe they were. And then you start having this distortion of reality skewed towards, oh no, they could leave me.
Yeah.
Or, oh no, I'm not good enough. Someone else might be.
Right. And that narrative can take over really quickly. It can be difficult to separate reality from the narrative. That's why it can be really helpful to check in with your own system. Check in with the story. I don't know if you've discovered or explored any of Byron Katie's work.
Byron who?
Byron Katie.
Katie. Mm-mm.
Yeah, Katie's her last name, but people just call her Katie. Her whole work, what she's created is called The Work. I don't know how she got that trademark, but The Work.
I'll have it down below. Anything you say is going to be in the description.
Okay, great. So Byron Katie has four key questions of self-inquiry to detach a bit from thoughts that arise. And they are, question 1, is it true? If yes, proceed to question 2. If no, proceed to question 3. And question 2, can you absolutely know that it's true? And the answer to that is essentially always no. You can never absolutely know anything.
There is no objective reality. It's always kind of subjective,
Yeah.
usually.
And sometimes, so say it is an objective fact that something happened, then what is the maybe the underlying story, that the belief that's coming from that? Like, he hit me. Is it true? Yeah, he fucking hit me. Like, objective fact. But what is the belief around he hit me? Maybe I'm weak.
I'm bad. Yeah.
I'm bad.
Yeah.
Worthless. Like, whatever might come up around that. So finding the belief, because you never absolutely know that that's true. Question 3, how do you react when you think this thought? How do you show up?
And that's if it's not true, right?
That's when you finally get the no out of them. When you finally like realize, oh no, I can't. No, it's true, or no, it's not true. Then it's okay. So how do you react then when you think this thought? We can't control the thoughts that we have. They just come up. We have no control over the thought that pops up, but we do have control over what we continue to like fuel. Can you see a reason to drop the thought? Usually someone, it's like, yeah, I can. There's a reason to think that I'm not bad.
You mean good?
Yeah.
You can say it about yourself. You can say I'm good.
And sometimes they're like, no, I can't see a reason to drop the thought because they're so attached to it. And can you see one stress-free reason to keep the thought? That always gets the answer to that's always no. Like, if some thought's creating suffering,
right,
there's no stress-free reason to keep it.
right.
Which then leads to question 4, which is, who would you be without the thought? Or how do you react if this thought didn't exist or couldn't exist? So that's her 4-question process of self-inquiry that I think is a really, really helpful for people that are very heady and get really attached to thoughts. She has a whole, there's like a final step, turning it around, like turning your belief around. So I'm bad. There's, okay, how do you turn that around? It's like, I'm good, or maybe they're bad, or I'm not bad, or there's like lots of different ways to turn these beliefs around. I recommend checking out the worksheet that guides you through it. It's all like very accessible and DIY. So yeah, that comes back to loop that back to the anxious attachment tendencies. Often can be very heady, get attached to these narratives without knowing that they're absolutely true. And then reacting and responding out of that, which then can create problems of their own. If they're with a secure person, that secure person can probably be pretty grounded in receiving that and helping them navigate to what it is that they're feeling, offering reassurance, while also setting healthy boundaries for themselves, that they're not getting into unhealthy territory of like codependency or regulating for them. They're not sacrificing their own needs, but they're great at reassuring, right? That secure partner is. So, but if the anxious is with an avoidant, that's the anxious avoidant trap that merry-go-round goes round and round and round.
Which I want to get into avoidant, but one of the things, because, I'm both, which we'll get to that in a second. I've been both. I can't say what I don't want to be. But with the anxious style, or when someone triggers that mode of operation within you, because I do notice that in different situations, the stakes are higher. And for some reason, this specific person that I'm in a relationship with this time in my life is triggering an overcompensative response, such as anxious attachment style. But just in general, within the culture that we live in today, of rom-coms and, just this dream to find the one. And there's this huge, heavy expectation.
Yeah.
And it's this big, grandiose dream that we're all looking to achieve. It's almost like a goal now in life. So much pressure, so overinflated. And with that comes an attachment. And Ram Dass, I've been listening to him a lot lately, and how he says it is, I'm paraphrasing, but just basically that, unfortunately, when we fall in love, we think that it's the other person that is causing this feeling within us.
Mm-hmm.
And we attach that this person in my life is making me feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
When the truth is, if you want to get spiritual about it and think about it from a higher self kind of plane, there's just these different dimensions of experiences that we can have. Like, if I decide to fully be in the energetic space of in love, you think about it, in love, we're in the energy of love.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that alone. I can literally be in love at any moment by making that spiritual conscious decision within myself to embody that energy. And I think that's the biggest misnomer in our culture, is that someone else is creating this feeling within inside you, that we don't have access to it 24/7 anytime we want. Is it great to experience that energy with other people? Fuck yes. But is it dependent on them? Fuck no. And I know firsthand, because I try to focus my energy that way more often than not now, coming from that space of love in everything that I do and everyone that I'm with, and when I'm alone and when I'm making dinner, like going into that space of energy of love more often, because now that I know it's only contingent on me,
Mm-hmm.
there doesn't need to be an attachment for anyone else. It's just nice to go there with other people sometimes.
Yeah, I love that you said that. That's my favorite takeaway from that lecture that I mentioned, Path of the Heart. I'm sure he talks about it more, but yeah, this notion that like other people have the key to our heart, and like we don't have a copy.
So
You know,
cute.
so I like to think of that as that I have access to that at all times. I can, embody that. I can step into that feeling. Visualization meditation can be really powerful to like unlock that sensation. And, I have the key. And when I enter into a relationship with someone else, like I can choose to give them a copy and experience that with somebody. But yeah, you're right. Like it's here within all the time. And that's a great exercise. I think someone that's wanting to experience security in a relationship, whereas they operate from a secure place, incorporating that sort of exercise, that sort of meditation into your practice. Like you can dropping into meditation, getting real still, just noticing, taking some time to really simmer down and settle into your body, and then visualize a memory or relationship where you felt love.
You know what always does it for me?
What?
My fucking cat. Every time I think about my cat, I'm instantly in the love. Like ridiculously overflowing with it.
And where do you feel that in your body?
Oh, I mean, it's like, my arms, I don't know. It's kind of fucking everywhere, but I would say like definitely torso, heart, throat. Like I want to.
So like heart, solar plexus,
Yes.
all the way up to throat chakra.
No head.
Yes.
I have no, my head's not a problem anymore. I'm just all in the feels.
I love it. What's the sensation that, so it's like you feel that there. What are some of the, if you could attribute some physical sensations to that?
A warmth, an excitement, a tingling, a kind of antsiness, but in a good way, where I just want to like like wiggle. And to vocalize. For me, expressing love is always very vocal. Like, I enjoy finding specific words to make someone feel validated and seen. I like singing and making music. I mean, that's sound. I like, squealing and, making sound effects, when I see my cat or whatever. Like, and when I hug someone, I'll go, like I'll just feel that like low hum in my chest, like I'm just very like,
Yeah.
I definitely want to vocalize when I feel that feeling.
You're a hum hugger
I'm a
too.
hum hugger all the way.
I'll hug someone for like 20 seconds and hum the whole
love
time.
that.
People are like, trying to like, like, all right, like kind of pat me
they're
on the
like,
back.
all right.
No. Like, hang in here. We need 20 seconds before we get the oxytocin, serotonin release.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's that can be hard for some people.
Yeah.
And I'd love to go into the opposite of this, because I, as a disorganized person, which is the elements of both anxious, and now we're going to talk about the fearful.
Yeah.
The fearful can be so deathly afraid of that closeness. And what space is that if anxious is wanting to be attached to that feeling of giggle wiggle love?
Mm-hmm.
What is avoidant? What energy is that in, that it wants to repel from that feeling of connection?
I would say it's a coldness. It's like it's a kind of a hard shell. It's a more muted, stoic demeanor, a disconnection from the emotional experience. Maybe not all avoidants are like that, but oftentimes avoidants won't feel as strongly. They're more muted in the middle. And it's like, if you numb some emotions, you numb all emotions.
If you numb some emotions, you numb all emotions. Wow, that's big.
Feeling is scary for avoidance. So their defense, their protection mechanisms are to disconnect from that, create space from that. And autonomy is often very important. Like, avoidants are, develop this hyper independence, oftentimes pretty young, become pretty self-reliant, sufficient for meeting their needs. That can range on a spectrum. It feels really threatening to the nervous system of someone with avoidant tendencies when they start to become intimate or get close with someone that triggers a feeling, even just a little bit, that might be love, or a strong emotion towards them. It's like, oh shit, like I need to get far away from that, because that threatens, like literally threatens my survival. Maybe they don't logically or intellectually think that, but that's what's happening on a subconscious level.
And is it fear of feeling at all? Because like maybe when they were young, their feelings were invalidated and they were told to shut up and sit down and keep it inside. Are they running away from all emotions in general? Or do they just not feel worthy of the one emotion of love and connection? Is it a lack of feeling worthy of it that they run? It's not familiar. I didn't deserve that then, so I don't deserve it now.
A fear of all emotions, feeling all emotions, or is it a fear of not being worthy? Was that your question?
Yes.
I think it can be both. Like what you said earlier, if their feelings are invalidated, shut up, be quiet, be still. When they expressed, they learned, okay, I'm not going to express. Like I get love withheld, I get reprimanded, bad things happen when I express myself. So I can kind of blend in and coast if I'm just non-expressive. No, my fullness is not loved unconditionally. There are always conditions to my reception of love.
And so if someone's willing to give that love freely, that's not going to work. that's not what I know. That's not familiar. My full self isn't accepted.
You're right.
No.
Right. Because there's that subconscious belief, that part that so desperately needs your attention, believes, it's, that's not safe. Maybe that stems all the way from childhood. John Bowlby, kind of the founder of attachment theory in 1940s, like where it all kind of started, set the hypotheses that your attachment styles formulated in infancy. And the impressions left on that infant state that you don't remember physically or mentally, intellectually, but your body remembers. And through adolescence all the way to your first significant relationships have big impact as well. And that they kind of go together. It's still, it's still an evolving field of study. Yeah, there's that subconscious belief that I'm not worthy. I haven't been worthy in the past. I've learned that to be true. Ultimately, it comes down to I could be left like broken or hurt.
Because technically not receiving that love is also hurting them. But in their minds, that's maybe the lesser evil, is to reject it before it's taken away.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because once you spend time with those parts, once you spend time with that inner child that was hushed up and not worthy of his or her full expression, it illuminates that this is the fear.
I find for me too, there's also this extreme fear of losing myself. And maybe this is more on the disorganized definition. I'm not sure, you tell me, but when I get too close, when I've gotten too close, it feels like my sense of self is lost. I don't feel my own energy anymore. I'm tapping into the other person, and that's scary. Like, the avoidant part of me very much identifies with who I am when I'm alone. And when I'm around other people, I don't act like that. I am accommodating, or, when you're around people, there's just a different feeling in your body than when you're alone. Being around other people maybe is triggering my nervous system to feel dysregulated and unsafe. Regardless of the reason, I have found myself many times pushing people away and retreating back to that isolation just so that I can remember who I am. Like, remember how I remember myself feeling when I was alone, because that feels safer. And my nervous system feels more regulated when I'm in control of my environment and alone in my own energy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't even know if that's necessarily like attachment based, but avoidants are often people pleasers in their relationships, because people pleasing negates conflict. And conflict brings up emotion. Conflict brings up feelings of unworthiness. So it can segue to the final attachment style. Fearful avoidant or disorganized have become the more common terms for this final style. And that's sort of where you have a blend of the two insecure attachment styles. So a blend of anxious and avoidant tendencies. Fearful avoidant or disorganized has this higher degree of presence and capacity for being vulnerable and connecting and creating intimacy. But almost as soon as that happens, it triggers this flight response. Like, oh shit, too much. No, actually, I don't want that.
Too close. Bail.
I'm out of here.
Abort mission.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah. Hit the eject button. Like, get me out of this plane. So it's like kind of the most concise way. It's like really hot and cold tendencies.
Right.
At first, it seems, this person's asking really deep questions. They're really present with me. They seem pretty aware, and like we're connecting.
And vulnerable, and they just dive right in and they want to know all the things about me, and they're sharing all these intimate things about them, and they seem excited, and they're texting me every day, and yeah.
And then just like a switch,
Yeah.
and then they're like gone, or they shut off, and all those tendencies or all those good things that felt really connecting that you're experiencing just are out the window.
Are you alluding to this is your attachment? This has been your mode of operations as well?
Yeah. So
it's a bitch. It's not fun for anyone.
Not ideal. Not
No.
ideal. It's, really unfortunate for, the other person in the relationship. And then it also is just agonizing as the disorganized, the fearful avoidant. We have all those parts too that so desperately want to be loved and want that intimacy and connection.
Where have the terrifying points been for you? When is it too much and you pull the plug? Like, what's a typical trigger for you?
Because of my past experience, I've been really afraid of that deeply unhappy, ambivalent place that I ended up in many years into a relationship because I was so disconnected from myself. So there's a part of me that's terrified of losing myself again and being deeply depressed and anxious, even though logically I have, all the tools. I've done some really great healing work and I'm well on the path. I'm so much more secure. But once we've had insecure tendencies, they're going to rear their heads. So someone that heals from anxious or avoidant or disorganized to secure, those latent tendencies will still rear their heads. And as you're healing towards secure, you create more space between reaction and response. I can't remember who says this quote, but the space between reaction and response is where freedom lies. That's where your freedom is. And being able to sit in that is the secure. It's like the one that's healed towards secure, even though these tendencies arise. So for me, it's when it starts looking like we've spent a lot of time together, we've really connected. There's a lot of green flags, if you will. Like, this seems like a healthy relationship. Coming back to that, the one, is this the right one? Is this where I'm going to be the next 10 years of my life?
Is this it?
Is this it? Yeah.
Is this it? Yeah.
And the Anxious Love Coach on Instagram, love her account. She's made a couple posts recently, and it's just like, you don't know. That's the thing. It's like, you can't know. Even if you're married or in a long-term committed monogamous relationship, or it doesn't matter, polyamorous, but if you're in a long-term relationship with somebody, you never know if it's it. Take it one step at a time. Detach from the narrative. That can I absolutely know that it's true, that this is not it, or that this is it? No.
See, those labels are one of my main triggers for pulling plugs, because once it starts getting to that phase of I'm the girlfriend now, and pretty soon maybe we need to be thinking about committing and in other ways that are more solidifying.
Yeah.
Those labels alone will terrify the fuck out of me, to the point where, as I'm healing, as much as I understand fear of commitment and not creating these more long-term plans with people can also create problems. Right now in my healing process, I need to detach from the labels and in my mind stay autonomous and just share space with people, exchange energy in the moment, and not call it anything. And that's just currently where I'm at, because it gets very scary for me. I start hearing those things and I'm like, oh no, this is the thing. Abort. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Do you find not labeling it as helpful? Or does it hurt? Because it's a two-sided thing where it's like, you've been with this person for 5 years and she wants a ring, but you're not doing, you know what I'm saying? There's problems there too. I understand.
Yeah, so it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Is it helpful for the avoidant person? Absolutely. Not labeling it. It's so soothing. It's like, oh, okay. Is it helpful for the anxious? Absolutely not.
What are we?
Yeah. Um, and a secure person is probably going to depend. It's going to depend on what their needs are. If you perpetually can't commit and they need someone who can commit, that's just the truth of it. And maybe you're just not a match at this time. And one or both of you will decide to go separate ways if you're with someone secure. Even if you are with someone for a really long time, you still don't know. Like there's no certainty in life except what, death and taxes, right? And so you just got to take it one step at a time. And how do I feel right now with this person? And maybe if I don't feel good, can I create space for my reaction of, oh, I don't feel good, and my response of, I'm out of here, and I create like a little bit of space. Do I perpetually not feel good for weeks or months on end with this person? That might be something like worth considering.
And when I feel that way, I'm now forcing myself to say, hey, I feel like running right now. I want to do the thing. I want to peace out. Can you help me, please? I'm freaking out. Can you please give me like a day to myself so I can feel my own energy again? Like starting to ask for that space that I need.
Yeah, I think that's so key. Like kind of what we talked about at the beginning. It's so key in articulating this messy shit as it comes up, even if it feels scary, even if you're afraid that it's going to scare them off. Being able to let them know, I'm pretty scared right now. I'm noticing a desire to flee. I'm not saying I'm going to act on that, but I want to let you know this is what I'm going through. And then maybe you have the ability to ask for what you need, to maybe if they can help you work through it or help you discern, find some clarity around maybe what it is that you need.
Because that's the biggest thing that I feel that initiates the flee response is I have learned to just trust my own judgment. Like that's one of the main reasons why I peace out. I'm like, oh shit, I made the wrong call. I don't want to be the fuck up that picked the wrong person. So I gotta bail. And what I do is I really put myself in a lose-lose because from the gate, as I'm diving in and like exploring the person, and it's like the fun, exciting time of like connecting to the person, and after not being with someone, like it's so exciting, and I just dive right in. During that process, subconsciously, there's also a part of me, there's like the little avoidant in the back that's like hyper vigilantly looking for red flags. I'm like setting landmines up for the other person to step on, and there's like little tests, and I do it very subtly. Oh, that little part of my mind is so sly. I don't even always know that it's going on. It's looking for the problems. But then when I have all my little ducks in a row and I've had enough tests, I go, okay, there's a fail. It's not going to work. And there's my excuse to bail. And like the part of my brain that doesn't want to be a failure and to pick the wrong person is so overcompensating and just looking for anything wrong that we put ourselves in this lose-lose that there is no human on earth that will check those boxes. And so we end up perpetually starting and ending relationships so quickly. At least this has been my experience with Disorganized. We go through the motions so quickly that it's just this up and down phase with new people and, getting to know them and then pulling out before it can ever solidify into anything or last long term. And that's so painful for everyone. Obviously, the person that is being thrown into the deep end of love and interest and everything, and then all of a sudden pieced out on. But also for someone like me that does desire, a secure, long-term partnership where I can build for the future and have a family. Like kids need moms and dads, and I want to be a mom someday. And how the hell am I going to create a relationship like that with this pattern that runs through them just as fast as I find them? That's not gonna work. So it's so complicated, and it's a painful thing. And anybody that feels like they're going through this one, I send all of the sympathy and love to you, because I understand how confusing it is and how the psyche plays so many mind games to go through and oscillate the extremes of wanting to connect so bad to, oh my God, I need space and I forget who I am, so I need to run because I'm going to make the wrong decision. How painful.
Yeah. I'm thinking for listeners that may experience this, like some good places to start when that sensation to run, like dip out, arises. Where do you feel that in your body?
I would say very much my head. I'd say all the rest of my body is shut down and numb, and I am completely focused on what I know I need to do. It's like mama bear that sees a coyote taking her cub. I feel nothing. Target on the bullseye. I'm going to do what the fuck I need to do, which is get out.
Yeah.
At all costs, no matter what else. I have no awareness of anything else in my body.
Where in your head do you feel it? Is it kind of...
It's like right between the eyes. It's like death stare shit. Like
Yeah. So that sounds like a really vigilant protector. A really vigilant protector part. And this work can be done by yourself. It can also be really helpful to have guidance from a therapist or a coach that specializes in this type of work, this type of facilitation, to essentially start to get to know that protector. That protector that needs you to just get the fuck out, that's like laser focused. That protector has really good reasons for doing that, and probably comes back to a source of love for you and wanting the best for you. It's looking out for your well-being. Sometimes protectors can be scary to make contact with. They can be aggressive. They can be mean. They can be brutal.
That's why I call it kind of like mama bear instincts. Like,
yeah,
danger, whatever, at all costs, we're getting out.
Yeah. Actually, the starting point before you even start making contact with these different parts, especially aggressive mama bear protector that wants you to get the hell out, is identifying a safe space in your body when mama bear wants to like rip your head off that you can come back to. So as you're trying to get to know mama bear, you can like come back to that safe place if it becomes too much. So that's like step number one.
Because realizing that fear that's triggering mama bear to come out probably isn't to the magnitude for that level of protector to be coming out. So maybe realizing that the situation in reality is not that scary. So maybe kind of disempowering the extreme need to overprotect, because it kind of is an overcompensation. It's probably not as bad as we think it is.
It's probably not as bad, but we have to be careful to not belittle that fear, to not invalidate that fear that, oh, it's not actually that scary. That can just inflame that protector, that mama bear even more.
Okay.
Like, screw you telling me that it's not that scary. And that skill set with yourself directly translates to then your partner. Your partner has some emotional reaction. Like, instead of invalidating, saying, oh, it's not that scary. Like,
good catch.
Get curious about that. Like, that fear feels very real. And that, that feeling is subjective. Our feelings are subjective, but they're always valid. They always need to just be seen. They don't have to be fixed. They don't have to be agreed with. Like you're exploring that mama bear. Like, you don't have to agree that it's as scary as mama bear thinks it is, but to at least validate that, yeah, that must feel very scary. That makes a lot of sense that would feel that scary. And that compassionate understanding is what disarms the magnitude of that fear.
Really good catch. And I love that differentiation, because you got to the same place of de-escalating that fear within yourself, but through love and acceptance rather than, oh, shut up, it's fine. It's not that scary. That's so dismissive of me to talk to myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for making me aware of that.
You're welcome. And what does that sound like? Oh, shut up, it's not that scary. That inner child that was told, shut up, your feelings aren't that valid.
Right.
Your real expression is too much or not worthy.
That was always it for me. I was too much.
Yeah.
My parents couldn't handle me.
Yeah. Mine was kind of hot and cold receiving of what feels like really safe love, and then just gone.
That's painful for a child that feels that their entire survival is contingent on another person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stakes are high. I think it's 0 to 7 that we're in theta state. Our brain waves are in theta, which basically means...
Just constant theta state?
I think so. I mean, at least 1 to 2, and then maybe it starts oscillating and it gets more and more conscious. But like, I know up to 7, the theta waves are much stronger, which basically means we're like in a state of hypnosis for the first like 7 years of our life, which means we're just being programmed.
Yeah.
We're just sponges taking it all in. But it's confusing when you grow up with that. Like, that's reality. And that toxic way in which you're treated seems normal. And so when we're adults, it's like, sometimes unless we like really look at this stuff and dive deep, we don't even realize that our entire lives, our vision's been blurry, our vision's been distorted, until we put these glasses of awareness on and go, oh shit, that was fucked up. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. In doing this deeper work and subconscious reprogramming work, if you're going to do affirmations, do them right after a meditation or first thing after you wake up and you're still in a theta or alpha brainwave state. You're in this slower brainwave state to allow it to seep through into your subconscious so that your beta, highly logical prefrontal cortex mind doesn't just reject the affirmation as bullshit.
I think that was the biggest switch in my healing journey. When I really started noticing progress was when I found out about hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
And I started doing like past life regressions and like all of this subconscious work. And I realized how if I really wanted change, I needed to go deeper, because my conscious mind only could do so much. Everything else was ruled by the underneath, you know, like they show the iceberg in like psychology books or whatever. Like, this is just the tip. Like, when you see the rest of the iceberg under the water and you access those deeper parts of yourself, that's where I noticed the real change happen. And oh my God, I could actually move. Like, I wasn't stuck anymore. So hypnotherapy was a big pivot point for me.
That's amazing.
Okay, so we're at 2 hours. I want to be conscious of your time and our energy. But there's one more juicy topic I really wanted to ask you about, because I'm extremely curious and it's kind of trending in the world. Some people think it's the future. Some people think it's anti-religious and against God. What is your... Here we go. Ready for controversial? Here we go. What is your view on polygamy, polyamory versus monogamy and the traditional way of a one-person type long-term committed situation?
I can first say that polyamory is not for me. Non-monogamy is not for me. Can't do it. That feels I can immediately tell it feels very stressful for my nervous system. Like, stresses me the hell out. And I know I have many polyamorous friends. I'm very curious as to what's the subconscious, because I'm really into psychology and attachment and trauma. Like, I just want to know what the subconscious mechanism is that's driving that. Because all of our attachment needs are driven by the subconscious conditioning that we experienced. So I approach it with a lot of genuine curiosity. I guess I have some skepticism that it actually feels good. I don't know if you listen to Aubrey Marcus. He was so he's got a podcast that I listen to from time to time.
Yes. In fact, he had like a word wizard on, this lady that was like all about words and the meaning and the understanding behind words. I thought that was so fascinating. He brings on some really interesting people.
Yeah, to say the least.
To say the
really
least.
Interesting people. And he was formerly polyamorous, and now he's in a monogamous relationship. And he's talked about when he was polyamorous that it was kind of like what I was talking about, like where I was in denial about how unhappy I was and what my body was telling me. He described feeling sort of that way as far as relationship dynamics.
And his partner's like sleeping with other people and that sort of thing.
Yeah. How that really didn't feel good for him. He had to deal with like a lot of jealousy. And I think it undoubtedly facilitates or elicits probably really strong personal growth and communication skills and introspection. Because my polyamorous friends, like I have one who's come into mind, he talks about dealing with these things too. And he's like, almost like gets off on the, like, oh yeah, I'm like uncomfortable now. It's like, time to grow, baby. Let's go.
Interesting.
And it's like, yeah, I found that really fascinating. That there's almost comfort in the or not comfort in the discomfort, but almost like a rush,
a thrill
from the discomfort, a thrill, knowing that he's being challenged in a way that's making him a more understanding, accepting person, which those are beautiful traits and qualities to have.
It's funny because I see both sides of it. Like, I'm an overflowingly loving person. I want to love and give and receive and just have like beautiful connections emotionally with many people, not necessarily physical and sexual and romantic and all of that, but deeply intimate in many ways. I like connecting with many people. I see how wanting to overflow into many people would be desirable in that way. Also, to that point, though, technically, none of us are monogamous. All of us, throughout different phases, have been with many people. So there is kind of not necessarily at once, but it's not like some species are born inherently monogamous, where they only have one partner and then they die. And they made it and they did their one thing and that's what they came to do with that one, and they never mate with anybody else again. Like, that's coded in their instinct and in their species. With us, there does seem to be this gray area where we're not just one and done, usually. Maybe that's cultural. Maybe there are some weird societal things that are programming us to not commit to the first person that we're with, that we're always looking for greener grass on another pasture. But to your point, and kind of what we've been talking about, I think it can potentially, which is my skepticism as well, it can be just a fear of commitment and a fear of not being happy and finding a complacency and, being stuck or imprisoned in one dynamic forever, getting bored. Like, there's all these things that monogamy can threaten and can seem like, scary. So I'm empathetic to both, but finding the truth of the real reason why someone feels drawn to one or the other, it's so personal. It's so subjective,
Yeah. And in there you said, what of this is subconscious, like, or cultural conditioning, that the grass is always greener? And the thought came up just for myself. to inquire with myself, like what degree of my monogamous values are cultural conditioning?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have no idea, to be honest, like what it's looked like on a historic scale. Like what have other cultures engaged in? How much of my monogamous value is cultural conditioning? Coming back to that compassionate inquiry piece,
Mm-hmm.
compassionately inquiring and being like really curious. If I'm monogamous, like what's that part of me that values monogamy? Like, to start developing a relationship rapport with that part, to understand it, and you don't have to change it. It doesn't necessarily need to be liberated from that role of valuing monogamy. And then if you value non-monogamy, kind of getting curious in the same way. And then if whatever comes up, whatever the fears are that come up, or the uncomfortable feelings that come up through either relational dynamic choice, and what's behind that fear?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like wasted time? Is it like dying alone? Like what is that fear? Anyways, yeah, I agree. Both sides are very subjective, valid. I know it works for me. I'm glad that I know that. I'm glad that's at least something that I'm like feel pretty rooted in.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still room for more compassionate exploration.
I love that compassionate exploration, because I usually call it question everything, but that can go a little too far and lead to insanity, where you're never really landing on anything and you're just questioning to question and continue floating aimlessly, and not ever, making a decision and committing to something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guilty of that. I'm a very deep thinker, and I can think myself out of a lot of decisions very easily.
Yeah.
Yes. What has helped me, and just a philosophical little cap to all of this, is that everything just is. And as we move as humans with willpower and this gift of choice, I think that it's important as we question the feelings that arise, as we explore different dynamics within ourselves and with others, we aren't good or bad for feeling those things.
Mm-hmm.
That it really just is, and it doesn't make us a good or bad person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just kind of removing the human labels and even the societal standards on the actions we take and as we question them and move through them, it kind of is just a game. And we get to try all these different things and see what feels good and then leave what doesn't. And not to judge anybody else for feeling good doing something that makes us feel bad. And I think questioning the societal standards and the cultural components is important, because sometimes we're trained so young to feel good about something that actually doesn't resonate to our true selves. And so I love how you put that, like compassionate curiosity and really exploring honestly with ourselves. And maybe tapping into our deeper selves isn't so hard if we just step away from everything we've ever heard for a moment, and really just feel, like you said, in your body, where do you feel that? And what is that feeling aligned to? Probably a deeper truth that's from your higher self. That's good information to tap into.
Yeah, that's where it starts. That's where it starts, is in your body. As simple as that.
Travis, this has been amazing. I'm going to plug all your stuff down in the bio, the description.
Great.
But if you would like to tell my audience how they can reach out to you, here's the cosmic carpet for you, rolling out.
Thanks, Nova. Yeah, so my platform has grown so quickly in such a short period of time. I'm like trying to keep up. And I have lots of ideas and offerings in the pipeline that I'm currently working on. Keep an eye out for group programs coming up, courses, workbooks, other ways to essentially work with me if maybe my one-on-one coaching isn't for you. But if you just want to shoot a message, say hi, Travis Ambrose Coach on Instagram, travisambrose.com. Yeah, appreciate the support, appreciate the connection.
Thank you, Travis. Usually I end my episodes with a big hug, so we're just going to have to do it virtually this time.
Okay.
Really love sharing this space with you today. So good.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was
juicy stuff. I'm probably going to hit you up again.
Okay.
I feel like we could talk about this stuff forever.
Yeah, I also felt that way. It's like there's so much more that we didn't even get into.
We'll have to have another one.
I look forward to it. Yeah.
Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, Nova. We'll be in touch. Talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.